if you've been in a relationship and you didn't pick up on the right things and you're going into the next relationship and you're like, I'm going to make sure that they don't pull one over on me this time. It's like, that would be like going to lift a weight. You can't lift it and you go, you're not going to be too heavy for me next time. It's like, yes, they are still going to be too heavy for you next time. If you don't train and build your way up to it, you can 100x where you're at now. So, but you have to focus on knowing what that process is. What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Relationship Theory. I am here with the Wonder Woman herself, Lisa Bilyeu. What is up, homie? You ready to rock?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it. We talking about trust today?
We are.
We finna?
What are 3 ways I can determine whether or not I can trust my partner? What are some questions I can ask them to get a better understanding of how trustworthy they are earlier in the relationships?
Ooh. So one, if you're already in a relationship with somebody and you don't know if you can trust them, that's a very bad sign. I don't know, though, if it's that they don't trust themselves to assess, if they don't have the ability to like read people, because trust is all a vibe check for me. It's the way questions are answered. It's not the question that you ask. It's how people are. Are they acting suspiciously? And by the way, like if somebody was doing something weird, I'd just be like, that seems really weird. Just out of curiosity, why are you trying to hide your phone? Like, why do you turn your back to me? Why'd you, whatever. I would just address it directly.
You do that, and I'm just like, oh, you're being silly, and I blow it off.
I'd be like, wow, that's really interesting. It's entirely possible that it's me, and I really need to do the work to figure out why I'm feeling uneasy, but I'm feeling uneasy. And then, like, if they were like, oh, you're just being crazy, I would let it go and just chalk it up. Okay, cool. Maybe I really am being crazy. And then I would see the next time. But I am so confident in my ability to pick up on a vibe. I can't read minds, nothing like that, but I can pick up on a vibe. So like, I would trust it. I would address things head on, and I would not think, oh my God, I know exactly what's going on. But I wouldn't be silent if something made me feel uneasy. And if something made me feel uneasy, I'm actually really curious if you think I'm crazy on this. If it made me feel uneasy, I wouldn't engage.
Right, but you're not the normal. Like that's actually, you're right, but it's hard for people to do that. That isn't normal on how people feel. And let me break it down, because you get gut intuitions, right?
Yeah, well, I don't like the word intuition, but yes.
So here's where I'm going with that. You get the feeling, you address the feeling immediately. Not many people do. So for me, I go, oh, it must be me being paranoid. Oh, forget it, it's just me. And that's where I think we start to get ourselves into trouble, where then all of a sudden something happens and you're like, oh my God, I had the feeling, or I should have listened to it. And then we start beating ourselves up over the fact that we didn't actually see the signs coming, but we kind of did. So what I did recently, there was someone, this isn't a relationship, and I haven't told you this.
I'm like, literally, this is why I filmed the show. I love it.
Guess I'll actually have time to talk about this sort of thing. So I had a feeling something wasn't right with someone. And I was like, my gut's telling me something's off. And I couldn't pinpoint it because they were saying all the right words. Even the tone was just beautiful. But my gut was picking up on stuff. And most of the time, my entire life, I've beaten myself up over not listening to my gut. So in this moment, I'm like, okay, I'm just like, it's just you. And I was like, wait, this is the thing. This is the thing I keep ignoring. But I wasn't ready. I wasn't sure. So in that moment, babe, I was like, all right, in the past, I've beaten myself up over ignoring it.
Yep.
So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to mark it as I have a gut instinct and I'm ignoring it. Put that up there. And now, all I'm going to do is see how it plays out. Because if in 1 month, 2 months, something actually ends up happening, I'm going to come back and say, okay, these are the things that I recognize, I ignored it, and why are you nodding?
This is, that's why I don't like the word intuition, because it is an intuition. I've done this for 30 years, where it's like, wow, I feel off. Maybe I'm crazy. Mental note, felt off because of this, and then let's see what happens over the next week, 6 months, year, whatever. And then I will admit, because we've had so many employees and I've been so involved in the hiring process, I've gotten to play the scenario out 1,000 times. But I always force myself to say, do I think this person is a good hire, yes or no, on what dimensions? And then I watch it play out. And if I was wrong, cool, I own it. I was wrong. Interesting. Now I know a little bit more about what I'm good at picking up on and what I'm not. But because I force myself to say, this is what I think about this person, I get to find out if I was right or wrong. Versus leaving it gray so that I can think I'm cool no matter oh, I kind of feel a little off. Oh, I kind of am for them. So if they win, I'm like, I was for them. And if they lose, I was like, yeah, I knew it. I'm like, this person's going to be amazing. And when they don't work out, I'm like, wow, I didn't see it coming. And this is what I thought they would have been, whatever. So anyway, that's perfect. More of that.
Because I used to dismiss it, and then when sometimes it turned out to be true, I would beat myself up. So back to this question, where if you've had past relationships where you thought they were the one and you really trusted them and you didn't see it coming, and then you become paranoid and then you make decisions, is this my paranoia or not? That's one way to assess, is just say, like you said, put it down. But it was very hard. I've never been able to do it in real time, and that was the first time. This was like 3 weeks ago, maybe a month ago, was the first time I caught myself. I was like, this isn't right. And
Has it panned out yet?
Yeah.
Did we know the answer?
I was right. So,
I'm not surprised. You're very good at reading people.
So
there's only one thing that you don't pick up on.
But that's the thing, but look, I think a lot of us have things that we don't pick up on.
Yeah.
So going to how do we assess, how do we go back to being able to trust ourselves to make decisions? Because that's that fine line between if you've had a bad relationship and they blindsided you, you really didn't see it coming, you then take that into the next relationship, and then you may say, I can't trust myself. So now everything seems like a red flag. And that obviously can be dangerous and isn't great to bring into a relationship. So doing
all
these
they have
mini
to do
assessments.
is exactly what you just said. That's the thing, over and over and over and over. That's all I've ever done. There is no secret sauce. There is simply, whoa, that hit me weird. I'm feeling a weird vibe right now. Why am I feeling that weird vibe? I mentally note it. I will sometimes write it down. This is the person. This is what I felt. I know that I'm going to encounter them again. Let me see how this plays out over time. In fact, there was one employee that you and I hired together, and I remember saying to you, I can just feel there's something slightly off, but I'm going to ask them all the questions and see how they answer. And every one of them, they answered perfectly. And so I said to you, I really tried to put them in a situation where the magic question that people watching want to hear, where, and of course it's always specific to that person, but all the questions I could think of where it's they're finally going to reveal, they'll unmask themselves on this question. And they didn't, and they ended up being amazing. So I was like, wow, that's really interesting. So there was something that I picked up on, but what I ended up saying to you was, I've asked all the questions and all of their answers are amazing, so I actually don't trust the unease because I've chased it in every way that I can think of to chase it, and it would be unfair and uncharitable, quite frankly, to go, they've answered all these questions amazingly and they just really seem to have heart and seem to be wonderful. And so I'll sort of discard that initial, but because I was willing to note it and say, I did have this thing. So I don't get the sort of cool points of oh, I picked up on that thing, and because I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in accurate read. So it's all the times that you're wrong, man, that's amazing. Yay, I was wrong. Now I know. I'm honing in on what it is that I do pick up on. I pick up on bad vibes really well. And so the number of times where I'm there's something wrong about this person, and you know that this is facts. The number of times that I would advise somebody I wouldn't hire that person because I'm picking up on this vibe, I would state it, and then 6 months later be hey, there it is in full force. True or false?
True.
Yeah. So that is something, but it's just from doing what you're talking about. I have an unease, but I don't know what it is, but I actually take the time to, I don't always write it down, but I take the time to really catalog exactly what it was that I was picking up on and then watching it play out over time. So if somebody has a bad track record, you have to understand that intuition is trained and that it becomes intuition once you've run enough cycles that you can do it subconsciously. But if you don't train it.
Everything I love that you just said as well, and you do this very well, it's not about you. It's not about, I'm going to be right, or I'm not going to let this happen to me again, so I'm going to find everything about, it's not that. And it's actually beautiful that you give those people the space to identify, okay, what are the things that may be a little like a flag, and then let them be themselves and play it out. And at the end of the day, you want that person to be truthful, right? You're hoping they are. So it's not like that kind of, I'm going to figure it out. And that, I think, it becomes that when you've been stung in the past, because you're so worried about it happening again. It's like when I first met you, babe, I had I'd been with a guy for over almost 4 years, and I had these flags in mind that I was waiting for you to do. I was like, all right, he lied to me just then, right? Like, it's like you're just waiting because you're like, I'm gonna spot it next time, and next time they're not gonna get one over me, because it was so heartbreaking of what you've just been through. You're so desperately don't want to go through it again. So I actually feel how this person's trying to frame it. It's like, what things can I ask that maybe I can see the flags? But it never is that black and white or that easy. It really is over time seeing. And then I think also one thing to just add, I think I would just ask you questions. Like I've had enough therapists on relationships on my show where we talk about, well, like, ask them about their past. Because if you're like, oh, tell me about your past relationships, and they keep blaming the girlfriend or their past girlfriends for all the problems, that's usually maybe a red flag that maybe they're not being honest with you about the situation.
Or that they can't see it. That's even more terrifying.
Yeah.
And that's so the thing that worries me is if you've been in a relationship and you didn't pick up on the right things, and you're going into the next relationship and you're like, I'm gonna make sure that they don't pull one over on me this time. It's like, that would be like going to lift a weight, you can't lift it, and you go, you're not gonna be too heavy for me next time. It's like, yes, they are still going to be too heavy for you next time. If you don't train and build your way up to it, like, and that would be the one thing I would want people to really be open to, is you can definitely get better at it. Like, even if we're all on a spectrum, right? And so some of us are going to be able to get better at it than others, but you can 100x where you're at now. So, but you have to focus on knowing what that process is. Now, because we haven't answered this for people, and I don't want to leave them without any questions. So there's no way to give blanket questions. If I give somebody a specific question, they are going to sound like a robot. It is going to be really weird that they're asking that sort of out of the blue, jarring question about, here are the 3 things that I ask people to find out if I can trust them. Ask the question that's actually in your heart. That was what made me better at interviewing. In the beginning, I thought there were questions I was supposed to ask. And I wish I could remember the actual episode, but somebody said something when I was researching. They said something like in the middle of another story, and they were like explaining, this mindset thing. And then they were like, yeah, this time when I was 11 and my dog died, that really messed me up. And then they go back, and I was like, why didn't they ask a follow-up question about that dog? I want to know about that dog. And once I finally allowed myself to be like, maybe it's a bad question, and maybe only I'm interested in it, but I'm going to ask. Then the interviews became something that only I could do, because I was asking the questions I actually cared about. And so there's no like, I must remember to this, that, or the other. Ask what's really on your heart. Say what's really on your heart. Now, there is such a thing as letting sort of too much out too quickly, and I don't want to, pretend that there's not, but be thoughtful, but really ask people what you want to know.
All right.
Word. There it is. All right, everybody. That's about as specific as we can make it ahead of time, but you can practice this stuff. You absolutely can get better. Speaking of things that will make you better, if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe. And until next time, my friends, build a beautiful relationship. Take care. Peace.